recommendations, and I'll go through what to expect when we get to the public hearing portion, which includes a call-in number for those who are tuning in remotely, but you can just hang tight for now. The agenda will go as follows. We'll do a call to order, roll call, approval of tonight's meeting agenda, followed by the approval of the prior meeting's minutes. Then we'll do community comment, which, similar to a public hearing, is your chance for those who are here in person to speak about something not on tonight's agenda. After that, we have the public hearing, which is your chance to speak about that matter on tonight's agenda. And since we have no reports and recommendations, we'll go right to staff and chair member comments, followed by adjournment. So without further ado, we'll call this meeting to order. And then roll call.
Commissioner Elkhire.
Here.
Commissioner Miranda.
Here.
Commissioner Padilla.
Here.
Commissioner Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Junkus.
Here.
Commissioner Day.
Here.
Commissioner Bornstein.
Here.
Commissioner Felt.
Here.
Commissioner Hanneman.
Here.
Chair Bennett.
Here as well. Just, it's Halloween, spooky. Okay, so we have the approval of tonight's meeting agenda. Any takers on that?
Motion to approve the meeting agenda.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
So moved. Next, we have the approval of the prior meeting's minutes from October 16th.
Motion to approve prior meeting minutes.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
So moved. All right, next we have the community comment period. As I mentioned, this is the chance for anyone who's here that would like to speak about any matter that's not on tonight's agenda. You have 3 minutes to do so. You can come up to a podium, state your full name, your address, and let us know what we need to hear. Starting now. Okay, seeing no one, we will close that portion of the agenda tonight and on to our public hearing. So with public hearings like this one, the typical process is an applicant or development team proposes something officially, formally to the city, submitting an application to do so. Staff puts together a report based off of a variety of findings, how it complies, how it may not, with our current laws. Staff prepares this presentation for us. We exchange some questions, answers. Then we open it to the applicant team to do the same if they'd have their own presentation and have another exchange. And then after that, we open it to a public hearing, which is your chance to testify about the matter, after which we close that and we deliberate as a planning commission and make a recommendation for approval or denial. So without further ado, Carrie, take it away.
Thank you, Chair. Members of the Commission. This property is located on the southern border. It's part of the Edinburgh project. Site's guided in our comprehensive plan for office and residential use. Okay, is that better? Yeah, that's better. Guided office residential, and it is zoned MDD5, our mixed development district. Here's a look at the existing site. So it's the existing Marriott Residence Inn connected to Edinburgh Park. It's about a little over 3.5 acres in size. So the proposal is to remodel the existing building. It's 133 units into 136 apartments. So there'll be no changes to the exterior of the building. It would all be remodeling within. Just a few more pictures of the project. Again, part of the Edinburgh project development. Look at the existing site plan. Again, no changes to the parking field in front. The applicant is proposing to add additional landscaping along the street out front. Our city foresters reviewed those and found those to be acceptable. So the request before the Planning Commission is a site plan review And that's due to the fact that it's a change in use, and this requires a little more parking than a hotel would. There's also a variance requested. Within our zoning code, we require 1 enclosed parking stall for each unit. This was developed as a hotel, so there's no existing enclosed parking on the site. So the variance is to have 0 enclosed parking stalls. Looking at our pyramid of discretion, we're up here with the site plan review. This is apartments, multi-residential is a permitted use in the district, but you do have some discretion with the requested variance. So looking at the site plan, again, all the building, it's existing, no changes to the footprint. It's all code compliant generally, with the exception of the east side because it's connected to Edinburgh Park. Again, this was a master development plan. The height overlay district allows not 128 stories, 12 stories. Apologize for the typo there. And this project is well within that at 7 stories and 66 feet. Again, the variance is for no enclosed parking. The density here is 39 units per acre. Just looking at this site within the overall Edinburgh project, it's about 11 units an acre. So the primary issue is the variance for the enclosed parking justified. Looking at our variance criteria, the variance would be in harmony with the general purpose and intent of the ordinance, consistent with the comprehensive plan, and then meet our practical difficulty 3-pronged test. The owner would propose to use the property in a reasonable manner, not permitted by the zoning ordinance. It's due to circumstances that are unique to the property, not created by the landowner, and wouldn't alter the essential character of the district. So staff does believe that the variance criteria is met. Again, it's just a change of a use within the building. No enclosed parking on the site. Currently, the variance wouldn't alter the character of the district. That surface parking lot would continue with that beefed up landscaping out front. The intent of the regulation is to provide adequate and safe off-street parking. That is code compliant. One thing I didn't point out, I'm going to go back. So there's 185 parking stalls on this site. By code, they need 170. Within all of Centennial Lakes, the Edinburgh project, there were easements established over the parking areas for access for the public to use the park. So there is an existing easement over this area here. If somebody wants to go and use Edinburgh Park, they can park there. There's no change proposed to that easement. The parking here would be on a first come, first serve basis, no assigned parking. Parking study was done, and they figured they need about 100 parking stalls. Our code requires 170. So again, it is, there will be adequate parking. Having apartments with no enclosed parking is not uncommon in Edina. Yorktown Continental, Sunrise Senior, Summit Point, the Heritage, Walker Elder Suites, and most recently 66 West, excuse me, are examples. Most of those are senior projects, with the exception of the Yorktown Continental. The use, again, is permitted. SSTS Traffic Solutions conducted a traffic study, and this apartments generate about half the number of trips comparing a hotel to residential, so there'd be no impact to the traffic. So with that, I will stop there. Staff is recommending approval of the site plan and the requested variances that are variance subject to the findings and conditions in the staff report. And the applicant is here as well to make a presentation.
Thank you, Gary. Any questions? Commissioner Elkhart.
Just on the point of other apartments not having enclosed parking, how did that come to be? Were they established before the ordinance?
Yeah, that I don't know. Those are a lot of those, with the exception of 66 West,
Right.
predated me, so I don't know the detail there. With 66 West, That's a very small apartment on 66th Street. That was a conversion of a TCF bank building, and that's an affordable housing project. So no enclosed parking was required as part of that project.
Okay, and when we say I was curious about the objective of the ordinance, and I think the notes say available and safe parking. Is it safe in terms of exposure to weather and ice and whatnot? I mean, I'm trying to understand why we had that ordinance in the first place, what
Yeah,
we were
the
thinking.
real intent is to provide adequate parking for the users of the hotel. Kind of subjective whether a surface parking lot is considered safe or not compared to enclosed parking, maybe with security access a little safer. The option here would be to construct detached garages in that parking area, then they would meet code. That would be the alternative. So in terms of safety, generally the same. Parking is going to be detached from the building either way.
Okay, so if it's an apartment, it needs to be enclosed, but if it's a hotel, it doesn't need to be enclosed. Is that the
Correct.
ordinance? Okay. All right, that's all. Thank you.
Mr. Smith?
Just a quick question along those same lines, just to differentiate. Is it right to assume that enclosed parking means that it's four walls and a roof, kind of sealing your vehicle within that space? But covered parking, if there was just something above it to prevent, like for snow and ice, that's not really considered enclosed, right? That's just covered.
Right. Yep. It would have to be a garage or even a parking ramp really wouldn't qualify as enclosed parking.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Felt?
I'll follow along with the parking theme for a second. And another issue for safe parking, is there going to be any kind of low-level lighting? Maybe not tall lighting, but low-level lighting in the parking for safety, being able to see to walk at night?
Yeah, it might be a question for
Okay.
for the applicant. They would be required to meet our parking standards.
Okay.
Or our lighting requirements for parking lots. I would assume the site meets those today, but maybe I shouldn't assume.
So 2 more questions for you. Are there any other facilities on here that have reciprocal agreements with the Edinburgh Park for parking? Just curiosity, really.
Yeah, I haven't run across a development when I've looked at all these sites that doesn't have those. All of Centennial Lakes, the office building on the other side of the park has those same easements. So it was pretty much negotiated into both Edinburgh and Centennial Lakes.
Okay. And then the sidewalk is entirely on the easement?
Yeah, either within the right-of-way or on the subject property. It looks like it is in the right-of-way.
Okay. And that stays?
That stays.
Okay, thank you.
Can you, I saw some discussion of affordability in the materials. Can you just go over that a little bit with us? What is the affordable component to the project? Is it aspirational? Is it required?
It's not required.
Okay.
It's just something they're electing to do, that the units would be 60% AMI or below. But it wouldn't be a requirement. This is really, from regulatory perspective, it's, we're just looking at the units themselves, just residential apartment units.
I thought it was 80%, but maybe
It might be.
okay. All right.
There's a mix. Some of it's 60, some of it's 80.
Okay, okay.
But just to build on that a little bit, I think Carrie is kind of mentioning that that's more coincidental than, prescriptive or decisive in this case. It just happens to be that the rents that the applicant is intending to charge happen to be at 60% or qualify for 60% or 80%.
Okay. I thought I saw something, and maybe I was trying to connect it in some way to the variance request, but I thought I saw something to the effect of, well, the cost would go up if you had to build an enclosed structure, and that might
Yeah, I could-
compromise the ability to charge certain rents. And, I was just trying to figure out whether there was a connection or not. So that was kind of
I could respond. I did
That's a
put
good
that
point.
information in there. I didn't include it in the findings because it's not really a finding for the variance. It was just more putting it out there as a fact of the project, but not a finding for the variance.
It'd be a practical difficulty, right?
Yeah.
Commissioner Padilla.
There was discussion in the paperwork that we got about the park wanting to make sure everything was in agreement, but I thought it was a little bit nebulous. So I'm looking for clarification on whether or not the park will be changing its hours, extending its hours, or anything like that to accommodate the fact that this would be a residence and not a hotel any longer.
Yeah, there's existing agreements, in regards to the parking spaces and fees and access to the park. Those would all remain in place. It wouldn't impact the operation of the park itself. There would be no
So they
change.
wouldn't extend their hours or
No.
anything like that? There'd be no change, basically? Okay, thanks.
So to go back to affordability and parking, so in terms of affordability, since this is not required, something could come up during conversion where things get more expensive and they would have to charge like slightly above that or whatever, maybe a lot more than that. They could sell it at any point and the new owner could decide to make it luxury housing or market rate housing or whatever, right? So none of that is required in any way.
That's correct.
Okay. And then in terms of parking, the staff findings mentioned, safe and enough parking. But really between the Southdale guidelines and the way the city had been, well, until recently, had been promoting mixed-use developments with parking underneath, a large part of that was, land use, right? I mean, we want to use most efficient use of our land since we have no place left to expand. And large surface parking lots are really not part of something that we're trying to do as a city. So, one thing we could require would be that they would build, we could deny that, and then they would be required to build some sort of parking structure.
Correct.
Okay. Or we give them a variance and some other thing, whatever. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Carrie? Commissioner Smith.
Just want to touch on the easements with the Edinburgh Park District or system. How does the maintenance of this space operate? Like who does what when? If it's winter, does the park just, clear out part of the lot and the owner of the property takes on the other side? Like just talk to me about the maintenance and how is that shared?
Yeah, the city does all the maintenance inside the park, but in terms of the parking lot, they would be responsible to keep that plowed. The easement, it just allows people to park there.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Questions? All right. Thank you, Carrie. Give an opportunity to the applicant team to come forward. Please introduce yourselves, where you're from, and tell us a little bit about what we're seeing here.
Good evening, Planning Commission. It's my pleasure to present this project to all of you. My name is Patrick Jutton, and my partner here is Abe Roberts. And we, in getting into this project, kind of looked at it as an opportunity to really come into a hole in the Edina rental marketplace where there's a lot of affordable options naturally occurring. Most projects you see that are coming down the pipeline will throw a component of affordable in and they'll ask for TIF financing, or they'll 100% require on financing that's several layers of local, state, and federal, and then take many years to come to fruition because you're in line for some of those funding pools. So we looked at this and kind of got excited about it because we're like, the units are such that they work well for apartments being extended stay. So they already have kitchens in them and bathrooms, and for the most part, meet most of the current code. There would be some slight retrofit issues, nothing significant. And the way the building's laid out with the adjacent Edinburgh properties, the Brookdale Senior Living and the Edinburgh Office Park, it's kind of just a nice harmonious fit from the outside. So you don't need, we felt, any really changes there because it stands well on its own. So when we looked at it and said, well, we can do affordable, we don't need to come in and ask for TIF financing for the city. It seems like it's really a nice fit for what the community could use. We were also kind of excited to find out that the traffic impact was going to be less as apartments versus a hotel, and also felt that whether we had to do covered parking or didn't do covered parking, that the project was still something we were committed to doing. But when we got into the details of the parking issue, kind of and iterations with Carrie and whatnot, looking at ourselves, to do single covered parking, fully enclosed, doesn't really fit on the way the site's currently laid out. It's you can't do turning radiuses and whatnot for structural supporting elements of a garage. It also kind of looks a little bit wonky when you got a bunch of garages in front of a hotel or apartment building for its future use. And then we also looked at the possibility that the discussion went to a ramp option. And again, it adds a lot of cost to do a parking ramp. It doesn't seem to add any additional benefit from what's currently been there for the past 35 years, given that the parking is sufficient to meet the need of a hotel or an apartment building. So we just kind of felt that for the project to really get the biggest impact as a naturally affordable project. So again, it's not a coveted project where we're looking at just the rates we charge to be naturally affordable. And the question was, most would be 60% AMI 92 units, and then 44 units would be at the 80% level or below. So the whole project's 80%, but a great portion's 44%, so, 60%. So, we felt that it addresses a big need in the 2030 plan that the city has, and certainly in the Twin Cities Metro, there's a lack of projects you can deliver quickly without having to ask for supporting money from the municipalities or the state or the federal government to get a project that most people need right now. There's just a big hole in the housing market for this type of project. So that's why we're excited about it. And I know you had some questions about easements and whatnot. All the easements and covenants stay in place. Maintenance is maintained by us of surfaces, walks, the parking lot. We maintain the green spaces. Where there's an exception, where there's a green space on the north side of the property, where you'll see in your paper where there's a road that comes in, and that goes over what's part of the park site. It's detailed as Lot 4 and then comes into our building, and that's a service drive that gets used for trash and currently linen deliveries and whatnot, food deliveries for the breakfast concessions that are currently done. So that's the one spot where you do see I believe it's a shared plowing agreement, but the whole parking lot surface area is plowed by currently the hotel and would be continued to be plowed by us and maintained by us. Seal coating, striping, all that wear and tear items. And then to address the lighting, there's bollard lighting on all the sidewalks on the park side and then the front of the hotel, those walks, and those were just updated 2 years ago by the current ownership. And then there's overhead canopy or gooseneck type lighting on poles throughout the parking lot. And that will stay in place in our proposal, so no changes there. So that's my little couple of minutes about the project, and then any questions that you would have for me or for my partner, I'd be happy to answer for you.
Well, thank you very much for your presentation and the application. Commend your creativity and your practical outlook to make something like this happen. Any questions, comments? Yeah.
In the traffic study, you mentioned the proximity of existing and proposed bicycle facilities, and how that impacts your site. Do you plan on, increasing the amount of bicycle facilities currently on your property, or
There's
offering?
currently none on the property. So
Right,
yes,
that was about my next
Yes.
point was that
there
there
aren't a lot
aren't
of
any.
bicycle riders at hotels these days. So we've added, and on the most current iteration that Karen and I went through, and I don't know if it's in your packets, I'm assuming it is, there is approximately 12 spaces for a bike rack on the exterior on the north side where there's currently a patio. So we'd build off that patio and then add a dozen parking spaces for bikes that could be hitched up to like a loop style rack.
Okay. Any consideration for e-bikes as well, like in terms of the additional space that they might need or anything like that?
I don't know that much about e-bikes, I gotta admit. So in terms of like charging
No, I mean, just sometimes, it's a tighter fit, so if some of them are bigger framed and stuff like that. I just wonder, or
certainly
a
give
covered
consideration
facility or
to-
anything like that either.
Yeah, to newer rack designs that don't put them so tight, maybe have a bigger, we've got room to put a bigger, longer rack, but yeah.
Commissioner Padilla.
Thank you for your presentation. A couple of different directions I want to go in here. Carrie mentioned that you were going to do some remodeling within. So just in terms of the site plan aspect of this, could you go into that a little bit?
Within the building envelope itself. So we'd be adding 3 units to the current count of 133. Originally, there were 142 units when this was built in 1990 as a Hawthorne Suites. And then in 2012, there was a large remodel done that Marriott requested of the ownership to keep the franchise. And they ended up reducing the count down to 133 units. What they did is they combined 2 stacks of 1-bedroom units and made those 2 bedrooms. So they lost 7 units in their unit count. And then there's a unit that currently is being used to store hotel sundries and mattresses that was never remodeled. When they did 2012 remodels, that would be one of the 3 units we're adding back into the count. And then there was a fitness room that was created in 2012 that broke out 2 units that we bring back as the 2 units, 2 1-bedroom units.
So inside the units, you're not going to make any changes? You're just bringing a couple more
Well, the
online?
changes, like we've got to, by code issues, we would have to widen doorways in some of the units till we got 32 inches clear. That's an ADA requirement according to the 2020 code. That's in place that I've talked about with the building department. From the 2012 update, we would not see a whole lot of changes other than probably some modifications to closet locations, increased closet space. Kitchens are tight in some where they've got small 2-burner cooktops that we'd like to convert to a true range. A stove
And there's no
oven.
laundry facilities in
There
the,
currently is on the first floor.
but not in the rooms, just down the hall?
No, there's not in the rooms.
And that will remain the same?
We are exploring adding that, but it's tough to do because of the stacking and the venting and trying to get it all to line up right and then get it out to your main sewer line.
So you're
So-
anticipating that there will be 1 laundry room in it?
We would likely put one where the service closet is on each floor to add one to each floor and then have a larger one on the first floor.
And the only rooms that have ovens are the 2 bedrooms, which there's only 1 on each floor.
I believe some of the 1-bedrooms do as well have a range in them that we've seen.
They have a range, not an oven.
That's an oven stove combo.
So, okay, I was told that it was only the 2 bedrooms.
Okay. Well, the ones we toured, some of the 1-bedrooms did. But our plan would be to go to like a smaller 24-inch instead of a full 30-inch range in those kitchen units that don't have them.
And who's going to manage the apartment building?
So post during the construction and whatnot, I've got a real estate brokerage firm called Top Seal Realty Company.
Top sale?
Yes. And my partner and I have other projects in Minneapolis, and we've done in St. Louis Park, where we've all naturally affordable, where we've managed those as well. And so we've had a good run with attracting good tenants and operating those as apartment buildings.
There's discussion in the information about the value of other projects, but not the location. So you just mentioned St. Louis Park. Where are some of your other projects?
We currently have one on Pillsbury Avenue in Minneapolis, 5924 Pillsbury. And then prior ones in St. Louis Park on Pennsylvania Avenue, 1349 and 1357 Pennsylvania Avenue. One that's been sold on Idaho Avenue in St. Louis Park. So all of those were ones where rehabs were done and then released.
And
All the properties.
you're not planning on doing anything to the outside of the building at all?
No. So what you see right now is what you'd see as you drive by it, with the exception of landscape screening increased around the parking lot perimeter.
And I see that you had experience in REO, so you're used to dealing with,
I've dealt with some tough properties.
yeah,
This is not a tough property.
right. And you're not adding any amenities to the building?
The building amenity structure will be slightly modified. We don't need a commercial kitchen anymore. We don't need a commercial laundry room anymore. So in a situation like that, we could see the laundry going to a storage location, the commercial kitchen potentially repurposed into a more usable demonstration kitchen with residential grade appliances, or incorporate it into the lobby area as like we plan for the current office spaces to be more co-working spaces for tenants to be able to use who want to work remotely and get out of their unit. So we'd reconfigure some of the space, but in terms of the way the amenities are laid out, for the most part, they're pretty consistent with how you'd see it after the work.
And how far would you say the closest bus stop is?
The traffic report calls that out. We've got one on Airborough Way in Minnesota, I believe. And then there's a one on the York side. I'd have to look in the report. That is, I think, stops just at the office park.
Thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Smith.
Thank you for the presentation. Hopefully I won't take up too much time here. Just talking on the parking, what's the occupancy rate today of the hotel?
Today's going down because of the cold weather, but I mean averages, I think it's in the low 70 range. It's commensurate with the peer hotels around the Burlington Strip.
And once you guys are done with the upgrades and converting it into apartments, what would you anticipate the occupancy
We
rate
would
to be?
expect to see it in the 94-95% occupied range.
Okay. The parking study that was done, was that based on just current traffic movement or kind of projected traffic movement post-development?
So I'm not a parking study expert, but also I spoke with a consultant about this, and I believe she can speak.
She is online.
She's on the Zoom, so she can pipe in. So she's going to know the methodology a lot better than me. But they look at the use of hotel use versus apartment use. So it's their methodology and studies that determine the car count, use, traffic in and out of the site. So the hotel right now is very busy on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday nights as an extended stay. So it's not as busy on the weekends that you would expect, say, with a non-extended stay. So it really serves more of a business clientele. About 60% of their business is corporate and business clients, not as much leisure.
Gotcha. I guess where I was going there was trying to figure out if the reduction in traffic is based off of a low occupancy rate versus, a higher occupancy rate once you guys do the work, just to compare apples to apples, right? Like if it's like 70% now and 70% later, you could compare those two.
Yeah, and that just so, and I'm not a hotel person, but when I look at a hotel occupancy, that's their annual occupancy rate. They give me at 70. So my understanding is they run very high on the weekdays, and then it drops off on the weekends. So you might only be 50% occupied on the weekends, but you might be close to 100% on your weeknights
Okay.
to their current operation.
And going back a little bit on the retrofitting, so the appliances that you're going to use, right, are these like energy efficient appliances, the ones that you're going to put in and replace?
Yeah, yes. So all appliances currently, I think, were put in 2012. So they're more current than the 1990 versions, but yes, be Energy Star, and it's all electric. There's no gas appliances in the units. So.
Okay. And in terms of the process of construction and timing, so let's just say we say yes, right? And then you guys go off and you start doing the work. From once you start the work to once it's ready for occupancy, how long would that take? And what's the process that you have to go through?
Good question. The process, we would start the tenant plan, start with the top floor and work our way down and then work the ground floor amenities at the same time working our top floor. So lease-up will come on the top floor units first. And the first unit should be ready summer 2025. Our planned start date would be, it's a little bit floating date because the hotel's got to wind down, which they're going to need some time to wind down. That means offload corporate contracts. They might have with Delta or FedEx or whomever, the local companies that place people there on a regular basis. And then they would give us the hotel shut down, and then we'd be able to start the construction. So we're thinking that to start around February or March timeframe.
Just a few more, and then I could pass it off to my fellow commissioners here. Just thinking through the parking lot itself and safety, right? So with a covered, enclosed parking lot, typically there's, a badge of some kind that you have to maybe put on your car or have in your key to access the space. There's going to be security cameras, right? Talk to us a little bit more about any kind of safety features that residents would need to have. So like, for example, we'll be sharing this lot with the Edinburgh Park system. And so would you have residents come through that, with some kind of tag on your vehicle, let's just say that they hang up in your car that, you won't get towed because you live here. But the guys who move in here from the park because of an event, they would most likely get towed if it's beyond a certain time frame. So talk about that. Talk about cameras, security, and how that would be managed. Just share more about the security aspects of the space.
And I can't speak to what's on the Edinburgh Park side or the Brookdale part of the security because we do share property boundaries with them. But right now I know that there's a security system within the building of cameras on all floors and hallways and the common hotel lobby. Typically on all my other properties, I like to put them around the parking lot. Whether you get cases like, it's just normal life and parking lots these days. You get people that are coming jiggling door handles and might do a theft, and it helps to see who that might be, if it's someone from your building or whatnot. That happens both in enclosed and unenclosed structures. That's not unique to just having a surface parking lot. In terms of maintenance, I think cameras probably is probably the biggest thing. The lighting is sufficient if you drive by the state right now. You see it's well lit. That's not a problem. There's no cameras in the parking lot currently, but I can speak to my other projects. I always put cameras in the parking lots, usually kind of around the four corners so you can get different angles, and on the entrances so you can cars coming in and going. They give an add on security. In terms of who can park there, I think you kind of got to see how that goes, because with the 85 spots allocated to the Edinburgh use during their rec hours, that's a bit of a information process we're going to have to give to tenants that this is public use as well. Historically, it hasn't been used a lot. Seems like more people use the office side entry because that's the main entry that's marked at the rec center. But we're more than happy to create a way that the use can cohabitate. It's worked as a hotel. Has never seemed to be a problem. With apartment use, most people are working during the day. It's kind of been historically how it's been. They're coming in the evening. With the park site, I think the hours are usually 7 to 7. So probably that 5 to 6 time could be where we see problems. And if we would need to do a designation like a sticker or a hang tag, something like that, it's a simple fix. But starting off, I kind of like to see kind of how our things are going to flow, and once we get higher occupancy rate, then we'll see how the use pattern fits in with the park use. Again, for 35 years, there hasn't been, and talking to Edina neighbors and whatnot, who know the site, have used the site, and I've used the site myself as a parent with kids over the years. I actually never knew you could actually park on this side till we got in contract to purchase the building. So maybe some of you are finding that out for the first time too as well. So now everybody knows there's parking there. But like I said, it seems like there's plenty of parking between what's going to Brookdale, what's going to the office, and here for the user base, especially in the wintertime. It gets heavy, and the hotel said they've never had a problem, even when they're running 100% occupancy with the parking use, as it's run historically. And the current owners have owned it. The current ownership's owned it since 2001, so they've had a good history of use of this property.
Okay, yeah. I think that'll be important to observe, monitor really carefully,
Absolutely,
right?
I agree with you.
Last question here for now. If I were to get an apartment, would I have to pay for a parking spot, or is it included in my?
Our plans include rent.
Okay.
So what you pay for rent has parking with it.
Could I not have parking and pay less rent?
I didn't contemplate charging for parking. So just be, parking's offered on a first come, first served basis.
Okay. Thank you.
We could do assigned parking and maybe that, but I'd rather do first come, first served than manage the assigned parking.
Okay, thank you.
Makes my life easier.
Commissioner Felt.
I'm going to go back to some of the building changes. You are taking off all of the signage, correct?
Yes, the Marriott signage. The building would be renamed. It won't be no longer called Residence Inn. I don't know what that name will be at this point.
Okay. And then there won't be any signage on the building except for
We'll probably
the
have
front-
buildings, right now I think there's like 2 signage windows. There's the signage facing Centennial Lakes on the west side, kind of where the green triangular tower is on that west side. And then there's a sign on the Potashere canopy as you come in. And then there's a sign, I think, on the front of the hotel that faces 494 or faces 78th Street. And there's a monument sign on each entry on Edinburgh Way and on 78th that's backlit. That's the current signage.
Okay. And I think like the monument signs and the canopy signs, but I think if there's any building signs, they need their own permit. They need a building
Yeah.
permit. Okay,
Yeah,
so you'll
that'd
apply
be
for
a
that.
separate process.
Okay. And then I was going to jump on the, I used to park on the other side too with my daughter when I took her to the park. So I agree with you. I never knew that there were 85 stalls in this. So it was a well-kept secret. And I do have a lot of friends that kind of seniors that swim in the winter, and I think parents with kids go there on the weekend in the winter. So those are going
Winter's
to be
quite busy at the park, yeah.
yeah, your busy times. And so you're thinking of starting in February, and it'll be a year to do the construction.
I think about 12 to 15 months, and probably about 18 months to get it full leased up.
Okay.
That's what our projection is once we start.
And then you're planning on keeping the building?
Yeah, we'll own it for quite some time.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll have a stable ownership.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Any other questions?
Yes, one more.
Sure.
Sorry, since Katie is online, maybe she can give a little synopsis about what she found in terms of parking for the hotel versus what she found for parking for the apartments.
Hi, I sure can. Can everybody hear me?
We can.
Ken, hi. I am Katie Schmidt with SSTS, and we prepared the traffic and parking memo that was included in the package for this project. So to briefly touch on the traffic question that came up earlier on how we estimated traffic for the existing hotel and for the proposed apartment uses. We use an industry current manual called Trip Generation Manual, and it's published by the Institute of Transportation Engineers. So it's an industry current kind of manual that traffic engineers, cities, counties use to kind of determine traffic numbers for planning for different types of land uses. And it's a national survey of apartments and a national survey of hotels, and they document the traffic rates for each of them. So we used those numbers, and I would assume it's average capacity for both land uses. So I don't know if capacity, it didn't really come in, we didn't assume 100% or 50%, we just used these national average rates. And that is where we came up with the traffic numbers for each of the uses. And the proposed hotel generates less traffic. Back up. The proposed apartments generate less traffic than the existing hotel. And we did not apply any additional reductions to that, given transit, given sidewalks, given walkability and bicycle paths. And I would expect there could be a little bit of a reduction we could apply to the apartment uses in addition, but we didn't take it to the next step because it was already less. So that is a quick summary of how we got those traffic numbers for the existing and proposed uses.
Thank you.
Any
Yeah,
any questions on that?
No, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And then kind of similar, moving on to the parking calculations, we considered two sources. The first source was Edina City Code, and the minimum parking we got from that is 170 spaces. And that's from a parking rate of 1.25 spaces per unit. And then similar to the traffic, the Institute of Transportation Engineers publishes a parking demand kind of manual where they document parking for similar land uses. So we got our other ITE estimate from that manual, and we were estimating with our uses and breakdown of 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom units, we were estimating 97 parking spaces would fulfill the need for this development. So that is where we determined kind of that 100 number that's been referenced a couple times.
And that is roughly, 1.25 is 136 versus maybe one per apartment, is what you're assuming? The demand was, you said 97, a little less than one per apartment?
Correct. And that kind of, it deals with a little bit more, the mixture is more 1-bedroom apartments versus 2-bedroom apartments, and the ITE parking generation manual has subcategories for bedrooms, so we kind of got more detailed within the estimates there, and that kind of brought it down a little bit to the 97.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Miranda.
Yeah, so speaking to parking still, if you're still on the line, well, I don't know if the owners or you could answer, the existing apartments that you own, which sound like they're relatively affordable, do you find the similar amounts of parking required to what the ITE or whatever is requesting?
I'll speak that bedroom count makes a big difference in what I see for parking from project to project. When I got more 2-bedrooms, I need more parking spots versus 1-bedrooms. I mean, it's just, we had 2 drivers.
Right, but do you see, one spot per 2-bedroom, per 1-bedroom unit basically is what turns out people end up using? Or?
Typically, in what I've seen in the most, in the urban area, Minneapolis, St. Paul, and then first ring suburbs, is usually a 1-to-1 ratio.
Yeah.
Minneapolis has now done away with parking completely on all new projects, which I'm not sure how that works, but some people still drive cars, so.
Right.
In any case, I haven't had any issues with not having enough parking spaces on one-to-one in any of those locations.
And are either of those locations near transit or on a transit line or anything?
Yeah, I'm right on Nicollet and Lindale in that one location, so those have the rapid transit buses
Okay.
in those locations. We have a couple of regional lines that run right past the hotel. I know Katie outlined it. I was just looking at that while she was talking on
Yeah, there's a few express lines
a few
and,
express lines.
and the six
I
bus.
find my experience as an owner and manager is that people are more prone to use the express lines to pick up a ride to work if they exist by the project. That's usually a beneficial line versus just the normal city route lines.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, that's it for parking and Katie. Anyone else have any questions for Katie? Can I continue then?
You got it.
Okay. Okay. So if you, how much would, if you didn't get the variance and you had to build parking, how much would it cost to build a parking ramp there for the required spaces?
Depends on how complex the rent is, but for 136 spaces, roughly about $3.5 million plus another $250,000 for entitlements and engineering and design. So you're approaching $4 million in cost for a ramp.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, if you didn't get the variance, would you go ahead with this project?
I would still go ahead with the project.
You
It would be a tougher project to hold long-term, though, because with our investor pool and whatnot, with the rates of return that they asked for us to deliver for them, it would be compressed.
And are you open to, or your investors, whatever, open to guaranteeing any percentage of these units remaining affordable in order to get the variance?
I'm open to discussion if it came down to, that. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And then, let's see. Okay, we talked about that. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
All right. Thank you, commissioners.
All right, this is a public hearing, so we will enter that period of the meeting. So for those tuning in remotely, you can jump in the queue, and then we'll jump right to the people who are here in person. But for those tuning in, to participate, please call the following number, 312-535-8110. Enter access code 2632-554-0716. And the password is 5454. And then when you'd like to speak, press *3 on your keypad. So hopefully this is all on a screen and you can just follow that. While you do that, we will open it up to those who are here in person that would like to testify. You have 3 minutes to do so, similar to community comment, which we had no takers. Just come to either podium, state your full name, address, and you got 3 minutes. When the light turns red, your time's up, and I'll do this to wrap it up. Anyone here for? Okay, great.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Steve Brown. I live at 5528 Halifax Lane. I'm going to urge you this evening to support this proposed conversion. This action will result in 136 units of much-needed affordable housing in Edina. Of these, 44 units will be for people who are earning between 60 and 80% of the area median income. This is a group that is not reached by our affordable housing policy, which requires AMI of 60% or below. So this is sort of a little hole in our affordable housing policy. So this is going to make a major contribution toward our goals set by the Met Council, which does include that gap area between 60 and 80. And I think the applicant in his paperwork provided you with the exact numbers, and I think Stephanie Hawkinson also provided you the exact numbers. I think it's worth noting that according to the U.S. Census Bureau, 49% of Edina's renters are currently cost burdened, meaning that they are paying more than 30% of their income for housing. So this affordable housing complex may be attractive to some of those folks who feel like they're paying more than they should be paying currently. Well, this could be a very good deal for some folks who are currently Edina residents. This is also an excellent location for affordable housing. There's easy access to 494. The popular number 6 bus line has a stop right out in front of this. I checked that on the site today, so it's an easy access for busing. There are grocery stores, pharmacies, medical care, a library, a government service center, and parks that are all easily accessible. My first wish would be that the affordability period be set as a condition for approving the variance of parking. So if they would agree to a 20-year period or a 15-year period as a condition, that would be terrific. My second wish would be there be more units for families in this residence. It's not only a great location for all the reasons listed above, but there's that wonderful indoor park that I think Commissioner Felt referenced. It's a terrific place for kids, and if you had a family, it'd be just an ideal setting. I do also want to mention that the 80% AMI currently translates to $99,000 in income. So that's squarely middle class. It includes all the teachers, or most of the teachers. I shouldn't say all, it depends on your level of experience, but teachers certainly qualify at that income level. Medical technicians also qualify. And of course, there are a lot of seniors who would fall below that 99,000 income level. So this is going to be a very attractive complex for a number of both workforce members and also seniors. So again, I urge you to support this conversion. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else who's here in person that would like, yeah, come forward. You got it.
Good evening. My name is Leo Silva, and I live in Edinburgh condominiums, right next to the Marriott Hotel. I'm here today to say that I'm opposed to converting our local hotel into an apartment because I don't believe apartments genuinely offer affordable housing. The core issue with apartments is that they promote renting over ownership. Renting, unlike owning, does not build equity or offer a pathway to financial stability. Over time, homeowners could see their investments appreciate, while renters would just be stuck with an ever-increasing cost of renting that will prevent them from ever saving enough money for a down payment. Sorry, my first speech. I think this decision would just be subsidizing the profits of a faceless investment group at the cost of our residents. They might try to convince you that rent prices are fair, but as someone who volunteers at food banks, I can tell you that around 80% of the people we help live in affordable apartments that they can barely afford. They might try to convince you that the sun landscaping is enough to ignore zoning codes that provide proper enclosed parking spaces that protect residents' vehicles from snow and theft in order to save some money. They might try to convince you that residents will use public transit more just so they don't have to provide extra parking for families that share units. They might try to convince you that construction won't require city or federal subsidies, but who will guarantee that they won't need or use them later down the road? Perhaps I'm being too cynical, sorry, but I've tried doing as much research as possible in order to see the quality of his work, but I couldn't find anything at all. And the way this project was proposed, to me, it just seems like he's just trying to make a quick profit. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe they are a good company that we should cooperate with, but there's just no way for me to find out. Regardless, what I'm trying to say is that instead of affordable housing, we need to explore policies that instead support housing affordability. These terms sound the same, but they're very different. What I'm proposing instead is the construction of low-cost condominiums, like where I currently live in. By prioritizing ownership, we're not just providing a genuine place for people to call home, we're offering a chance for economic growth where residents can spend their money on local businesses instead of just housing. So let's not just build for-profit apartments that take advantage of government subsidies, let's build futures. Thank you for your consideration. Thank you for considering my perspective.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Please come forward.
My name is Elizabeth Toms, and I live at Brookdale Senior Living. We have 3 levels of care. Memory care, which they use the building limitedly. Assisted living, which is about 3, these are 3 floors in our 18-story building. And independent living. I live in independent living, and when we heard about the issue of these apartments, at first I thought it was a good idea, but we were all talking over dinner, and we think that the buildings, all 3, the park, our building, and the hotel are all, even the office building on our side by York, they're all connected. The only thing that keeps, you have to lock it to keep it. And our senior living has a complete balcony that faces the child garden. And we've had a lot of people who come up and they want to use the bathroom. Well, it's a little child that needs help. But we're very concerned about the security of this situation for children and seniors. We have a covered parking lot in the basement of our building, and even having our cars down there, there have been issues. People sneak in when the doors are, getting closed, and there was one guy who was using the hotel, and when someone was asked to identify who had been in their apartment, he had a different jacket on because he had a bag of clothes with him. So it was, if you're going to do something naughty, there's a way to do it. But we think that it's kind of an iffy situation, and they need to address the fact that there is just a lock between the security in all these buildings. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have anyone else here in person that'd like to testify? All right, seeing none. We'll go to the virtual queue. Has anyone called in?
No, we do not have anyone in the virtual queue. And then I just want to give a reminder, I'm going to need just your addresses for the record, if possible. Thank you.
Do you want them to find you later? Okay. Well, since it's been well over a minute that we opened the virtual queue, I think we're safe to close the public hearing, so I'd welcome a motion to do so.
Motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
So moved. Public hearing is closed. I take it back to the Planning Commission to deliberate. Any further questions or comments in regards to some of the comments we heard? Commissioner Hahn?
Apologies in advance for my voice. I'm going to do the best I can and try to be short. I am deeply sympathetic about the idea that we are not building equity in congregate living environments. State laws are a big problem, clawback and warranty problems, and the finance has made it unfinancially suitable, and insurance providers have basically pulled out of the market. So I agree with you, we need more condos, but in this environment and for the last handful or so of years, there just isn't the appetite in the development world. I think this project is a great adaptive reuse. I'm bummed I didn't think of it myself. I think it in line with our climate action goals. It is providing that naturally occurring affordable housing that we deeply need. I echo Mr. Brown's comments. It would be great if we could have larger units or multi-bedroom units and capitalize on that connectiveness to the Edinburgh Park. I guess I would challenge the developer. There is a lot of seniors coming who need affordable housing, but I think just that location, from the family perspective, there's a unique opportunity there. What's before the Planning Commission is really to understand if we can grant a variance, if we don't like their business model, if we don't like the clientele or the pricing. We're allowed to have those opinions, and you can vote at the ballot on Tuesday. Everybody vote. But in my mind, the point of the ordinance for covered parking was to create safety and security. I don't know why this project would be any different in terms of how we think of it, if it was affordable or market rate. Do we think having open air parking is not safe for a person living in our city? Lots of people have open air parking. I enthusiastically support this, and thank you, and I commend you for figuring out a way to make that affordable housing without using any government financing, city financing. You're not asking for any subsidies of any kind. You found a unicorn property, and you're going to do something great with it. I would hope, and I'll throw my voice in, that City Council encourages you guys to really make sure you have a thoughtful security plan because of the connectivity to public amenities in that Edinburgh Park, and encourages some sort of signing that makes it clear when you are at 100% occupancy that there are, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, whatever the hours are, these spaces are reserved for users of the park. I want to make sure that's available, but that's not my purview. I'll just suggest that personally to City Council. But thank you very much for coming tonight.
Just go down the row.
Go down the line. I agree with Commissioner Hunneman. You had touched on it. The request before us is just about a parking variance. We have very little to do with the building itself. It's already allowed to be used as a residence. So that part we have very little say over. In terms of the variance for the parking, I am fine with the surface parking, and I actually appreciate, the additional $3.5 million, $4 million with soft cost to kind of build a ramp. Not having to do that will keep these rents lower. And I would probably, I have been in that lobby because my cousins used to stay there because they loved having the 2 rooms. And I would go down and sit with them sometimes there, and it was always lovely, and they were lovely people, and they're homeowners, and this was their kind of home away from home when they would visit people here. So I always thought the clientele there was, pretty good people for the most part. And I also think that people who'd be living here day in and day out, you will be vetting them. You will make sure that they have their source of income. They will be making between $75,000 and $95,000 a year, and they will be neighbors, and they will be users of the park and citizens of Edina. And so I think all of those things are good things, and I'm in support of it too.
I really don't have a whole lot to add beyond what's been said, except I'd be interested in the rest of the commissioners' views about whether there's a way to increase the chances of the rent staying affordable. The whole point of if one of the reasons they grant the variance is you avoid the need to sink $4 million into building a structure for parking, and that helps keep the rents affordable, and that helps the city achieve its goals. Is there a way to lock that in a little bit more? That's part of an approval.
Basically the same thing he just said. And I think the variance is reasonable. But yeah, I'd like to have that discussion as well. pretty much it for me.
Yep, I agree. I think it sounds like a great plan, and I'm for it. It sounds cool. I mean, you get more families contributing and seeing public parks, and as a student, I mean, that's great to see. I think there's not enough teens in parks, and so I like the idea of attracting new families. So.
Yeah, I think this is a pretty good project. The fact that there's no federal subsidies, I think that's a positive. I think we have to maintain that. Security, as was mentioned earlier, is going to be really important, right? Because if we're giving up covered enclosed parking, which security was a big aspect of that, and if we don't have that now, we have to really find other ways to provide security. So as I was talking about earlier, things like cameras, et cetera, right? Just to make sure that residents who move through and in and out of that space feel very, very safe. Locks where it needs to be, et cetera. That has to be a part of this. And I don't know if this is a question for Director Teague or not, but if we could figure out to make the affordable housing component a condition on approval, that's what I think might be the solution. And I don't know how you do that, but we have to maintain and lock that in, because that was the sweet spot that got us over the hump, right? So we want to make sure and maintain that. So whatever the investor class is looking at, if they could maintain the affordable housing component, that would make this a very good project. But overall, the conversion, it makes sense. I agree with most of what my colleagues have shared so far. But we have to make sure that we lock in the affordable housing component and really focus on improving security. I think those two things are the important parts for me.
As far as the variance goes, I am in support of the variance because I think that it's kind of a compromise. There's a lot about this project I feel like is a compromise. Having said that, as I said, I will approve the variance. I think the building is a little tired looking, the whole area is. I would have been happier if you had said you were going to do, some minor facelift work. I wish for the amount of rent that people were paying, there was more available or accessible laundry facilities and larger cooking facilities. That's somewhat tempered by the fact that there is a park next door. I'm at that park very often in the wintertime. And there are concerts there, so it does offer a lot, but it's my understanding, based upon what I read and what Carrie said, that even if people live there and have kids, they have to pay for the kids to go into the park, or they have to pay the annual fee for the kids to go in the park, because it's not free, basically, for anybody, even though I pay to go to the park. So having said all that, I agree. That's my only other point. I agree with everybody's point about other things that are important.
So the way I'm looking at this, it's actually pretty complicated. On the one hand, if you look at this, if you don't consider affordability or anything like that, and you were going to build a brand new apartment building, there's no real practical difficulty here about building a parking ramp. I mean, they have the space, right? So if this were, market rate or luxury housing or whatever, then I think, it should be required. Because that's what the ordinance says. And, but I think the key here is that this, we're looking at trying to avoid that. So the city has, affordability goals. The city has climate action goals. In this case, they kind of contradict each other, because an open surface parking lot is not really good for the city. It's not good for the residents. It's not good for the water at all. But obviously, people and affordability of housing is I would say trumps that. So I'm kind of like trying to figure out a way where, and this is where my questions came from, is trying to figure out a way where, so the other thing I'm considering here is that, as wonderful and great people as you are, I'm sure, there's a huge amount of consolidation going on in the real estate industry. So I was just randomly looking at Hennepin County maps a few weeks ago and noticed that a few apartment buildings in St. Louis Park, I wasn't researching this, so I don't have a lot of detail, but a few of them were purchased by some real estate investment group, and then during COVID. And then after COVID, if we are after COVID, that company was bought out by a Wall Street bank. So, and it turned out that was the most expensive suburban building, apartment building ever sold in the Twin Cities. So, as wonderful as these investors may be, their company may be bought out at some point or merged or something else. So again, I'm hesitant without any kind of guarantee. Again, this is where my questions were leading. It feels like a giveaway because there's no physical impediment to building the parking, even though it's expensive and I think wasteful. But that's not what the ordinance says. So I think we should pass this with a recommendation to council that they require some sort of guarantee of affordable housing. Now, I don't know that we need 100% affordability or anything like that, but I think some percentage should be required. I don't know what the regulations are for that, but I feel like if we are going to give this, then we need to have some sort of, it's something the city can use as leverage, I feel like, to get guaranteed affordability. So, and it could be at this 80%, it doesn't need to be 60% or lower than that. So, but I think it behooves the city to do that sort of thing. Secondly, again, because an open surface parking lot is not part of the Southdale goals, it's not part of our land use goals, it's a kind of a waste of space, really. Especially when it's going to be overparked by like 70 spaces. The goal, I think, would be to have that lot also, or part of that lot, be redeveloped at some point. And so the city has we can't require, well, maybe we could, but it doesn't make sense to require like bicycle infrastructure there because the city doesn't have a plan for it in Southdale. It doesn't make sense to require like a transit station there or anything because the 6 bus is going to be the E line, which is far north of there. And so this part of the 6 bus, I don't know if it's going to continue or not. Although there are other bus lines that go there. So I feel like instead of spending $4 million on parking, is there a way we could request the city council say, hey, give us $100,000 for the pedestrian and cycle fund, or give us money for Metro Transit for a transit shelter or something, So something where we get affordability or some affordability out of it, and we also meet some of our climate action goals, while they pay significantly less than $4 million for building parking. And so I think that becomes sort of a win-win. So that's kind of what I'm thinking, and I'd be happy to hear what you guys say about that.
Considering how much time I've spent trash talking surface parking over the years, it seems odd to be supporting this project, but I am. And I don't need to go through the reasons because others, including Mr. Brown, have already mentioned all of the offsetting benefits that this will deliver to current and future Edina residents. The one thing I think that does bear mentioning is related to the comments of a couple commissioners about wanting to find a mechanism to guarantee affordability over time. I am empathetic with that desire, but I guess I have a lot of confidence in the market in this case and the resilience of what we're calling naturally occurring affordable housing. In my view, these units are affordable today because they're quite small in the scheme of things. And rather, they're going to be nice places to live. I'm not trying to be critical. I'm saying they're small and they're modest in their amenities. They're going to be somewhat limited cooking facilities, for example. Plus, there's outdoor parking in January. So I think I feel pretty confident that the market is going to keep these comparatively affordable compared to the other properties, the kind that we typically see in this environment. So I personally don't feel a need for guarantees or additional restrictions or regulations or promises. I think it's going to stay affordable just because the market's going to demand it until someday it's developed into something else. Thanks.
I mean, this is interesting to me. We are so used to doing the PUD process and doing a give to get, but there is kind of no give to get here. And I think, the variance is just about the parking. There's no variance request for the building at all. So I think, in terms of, and you had mentioned, Commissioner Miranda, the surface parking and the runoff, they are doing a berm. I think if you wanted a variance and make sure that, any kind of surface drainage was kind of filtered on site before it left, that would seem like a reasonable request for the variance. But I agree with you, David, about Commissioner Alkire about the fact that the surface parking lot in this situation will probably help keep the prices a little lower. And that's my gut feeling on this one.
Question for you, Carrie. If this were an exceptionally similar project, but were condos instead, would it still have the same issue, right?
It would, whether it's owner occupied or rental.
So, I mean, I didn't think that this project could have got better until gentleman shared testimony about it being a condo, and I think we lose sight of that, and it's something to not lose sight of. And Commissioner Hahnemann brought up kind of why it's just not able to be done right now, but you'd be in the same situation of either requiring parking or not to achieve the same better outcome, potentially. But I appreciate that being said, because I didn't think this could have got better. And I'm like, if this were the same thing but condos, I would be more excited, But I'm still excited about this. It's just something we don't usually see, is just being creative with what you already got. The tendency really is to tear down and start over, and it's inherently less wasteful to use what you got. And at least as far as like the future of like Southdale, like it doesn't conform to those principles, but I think it opens up the future. It opens up possibilities in the future versus like, because the design principles don't call for building standalone ramps, even though we've seen those proposed too. I think if we were forced to build a parking situation, now you limit the future of this site for redevelopment, where maybe it could house the parking for this site or something more fluid. And I think I'm more interested in seeing how that plays out versus, forcing the parking. But yeah, just commend the applicant team for, it's a great creative, adaptive reuse. Commissioner Padilla brought up the laundry, and, you mentioned everything would be electric, so I just figured I'd share a comment. But at least with the all-in-one, heat pump, washer, dryer, you mentioned just the drains, right? You just need to find a drain. The other benefit that a lot of people don't realize about those, especially in a reuse perspective, is you don't need to vent, which is usually more difficult to find exterior walls and larger ductwork to get your venting to. Those type of machines use the heat and convert it to energy, so you don't have to send hot air somewhere else. So if there's a way to make those work or provide more facilities in a modest way or just combine units for families, I leave it to you, but so far so good. With the variance at hand, I support this either way. Any other questions or comments people have? I know there was some just questions about conditions on affordability. Has that waned or gotten more focus for any of you guys? Otherwise, willing to hear a motion too.
I mean, the only thing about the affordability, I mean, we can ask the city council. I mean, we can just say to the city council, is there, but I don't know about adding a requirement for it, just giving the advice. Does that make sense?
I know Commissioner Bornstein, Day, you had similar sentiment or at least curiosity around it.
Wasn't that kind of the way you were phrasing it as well, as recommend that the council consider whether it makes sense to add some type of condition that would increase the likelihood of more units staying affordable? It seems consistent with the, so maybe the market's going to keep them that way anyway. That doesn't seem like it's in tension with the idea that there might be like a ceiling or a cap place to make sure it happens regardless of what happens in the market. So I think I would support either type of motion. I don't see the downside in including a recommendation that the council consider if there's a mechanism that's appropriate for maintaining some amount of affordability on the site. The way to phrase it like that.
Claire, I think you got something.
I think the problem is if we put a, if we put a requirement to make it affordable in the capital A definition of affordable, then someone has to income qualify folks and monitor it, and it creates an additional level of compliance and burden that ultimately hits the operating budget of the management company, which makes operating the building more expensive, which means rents have to go up to support that additional cost. I liked Commissioner Miranda's thought. If we feel like we need to give to get, perhaps there's a larger park dedication fee or another public amenity that they could help make a contribution to that would enhance the overall community. But I think if we try to, I mean, these are small units, these are outdoor parking, all of the things that everyone said. Nobody's going to pay top dollar for them. That's why they're naturally occurring affordable. I think if we add cumbersome requirements that even if they are aligned with what the market will dictate, it just is another example of us creating obstacles for development for these kinds of attainable units. I would support a recommendation to City Council that they consider expanding the park dedication fee or perhaps some sort of contribution to Edinburgh Park itself, something along those lines, but I would not support a requirement because of, I think it's redundant and unnecessary and does exactly what we don't want to do to make these kinds of things happen.
Interesting. Commissioner Day?
So I wanted to take the recommendation piece of the, public benefit part, or whether it's something at a rural park or whatnot. But I kind of fixated on the bike piece, the bicycle facility piece here. I think that could be a good area of opportunity to, if we were going to have a recommendation, I think more than 12 biking spots if you had covered parking. So I'm thinking about our parking discussion, David, right, in terms of how do we increase bike and pedestrian facilities in the city. We had our discussion with the Transportation Committee, and a lot of big thing is it'd be nice to have covered bike parking and more bike parking, so maybe some kind of, trade-off in terms of bike facilities here, since the park is right there, and it'd be nice if families could easily feel confident that they could bike there all together, and that their bikes wouldn't be stolen, because that is a big hurdle for a lot of people when they talk about wanting to bike somewhere. I just think that's maybe an area of opportunity here for a give to get or a recommendation piece.
So, having been on the Transportation Commission, on a flat surface, putting bike facilities in is not terribly expensive or cumbersome or anything. But what's really missing in this city is, we just have been going very slowly with our bike and pedestrian plan because that's just grossly underfunded, which is why I suggested rather than just, nothing, then instead of spending $4 million and spending $50,000 or $100,000 into the pedestrian and cyclist fund, then at least, because they're saying they don't need that much parking, maybe, if a lot of these are couples or whatever, then one person drives, one person bikes to the E line or something, right? So the problem isn't parking your bike there. The problem is getting from there to the E line, right? And the city doesn't have. There's some bike facilities in Southdale, but there's not a lot, and there's certainly nothing north-south anywhere near here. So putting that money into the fund would allow the city to build more bike infrastructure. So that's kind of where I was going with that part of the discussion. So I would like to make a motion then that we approve the variance and the message to the, I don't know, message, what do you want to call it, to the council is that, they require a contribution to the pedestrian cyclist fund.
I'd second that.
We'll leave it for discussion then. Any discussion? We have a motion and a second. Yeah, Commissioner Smith.
Yeah, this is a question for, I guess, Director Teague, just so that I'm clear. The motion that we have before us, I know it's a variance for parking, but do we have, within the pyramid of discretion, right, do we have the ability to put a condition on affordability? Is that possible for us or not?
Yeah, so you're taking action on a variance. So there has to be a nexus between what they're requesting for the variance and minimizing impacts that the variance causes. So a dedication to the cyclist fund, I'm not sure. We'll probably need a city attorney opinion on that. Adding bicycle parking, in lieu of enclosed parking, maybe there's a nexus there. But I guess that's the thing that we need to focus on. There has to be a connection to minimize impacts on the variance that's being requested.
Okay, so that sounds like a no to me. So I guess one question for the applicant, if you don't mind. Why did you propose that, some of these units would be affordable at 80% AMI for some of them and 60% AMI for others? Like, what was the reasoning for adding that and making that something that we should be thinking about?
Okay. The reasoning, in part, as already brought up by other commissioners, is looking at the size of the units. When we get down to a lot of the one bedrooms, we're probably around 480 square feet. And I look at, for example, competing buildings like Yorktown Continental, which is a covenanted affordable building. They're roughly 520 square feet on their one bedrooms. And that's close enough to be a kind of an apples to apples comparison. And they're around $1,280 per month on their rents, excluding certain utilities. They get figured into the calculation. So I looked at that, and they're about $1,700 for the two bedrooms. So that's kind of where I was kind of looking like, can we be naturally affordable at those rent ranges with these unit sizes and not have to have, like Commissioner Hanneman pointed out, the burden of writing all these regulations and compliance programs for affordability that you don't get in a naturally affordable project. That's how we came up with the kind of how the breakdown between the units with the ones and twos and the pricing that we're looking at. That speak to your question well enough?
Yeah, yep, that makes sense.
Okay.
I understand how it came to be. I guess there's nothing really preventing you and your organization from increasing the rents if you had to, right? I think we're saying up here that it's naturally occurring, right? But it could go up. It could be unaffordable at some point, right? If demand goes up in that area. So that's what I'm just trying to think through.
But it won't it won't become unaffordable because there are more luxury premium product on the market. So this, to give it like a office building, right? The new shiny office building that gets built, it commands the highest rent per square foot because it's got the most amenities, it's got the best windows, it's blah, 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 blah. No matter what they do to this building, unless they're putting tens of millions of dollars in it, at which point some part they'll have to come back for some sort of variance or permit or whatever. This is always going to be a kind of tired small apartment building. It's going to be 1 and 2 bedrooms. It's not families. It's couples or maybe small children or retirees or, you know, widows and widowers. They're living on more restricted income and they don't want to be the shiny, sexy apartment building that's got the fitness and the pool and the rooftop. Like they can't afford that for financial reasons or they don't want to afford that because it's not a priority to them. So I think he's referencing AMIs, which are a part of the affordability standards and programs, but he's not going to check to see what people can pay. If Steve Jobs wants to rent a 1-bedroom tiny apartment for that, he can, but he's unlikely to do so because he won't have laundry, because he won't have covered parking. He just won't.
All right, yeah, no, I think it makes sense. I'm hoping that, you know, this is a good conversation, right, to just really understand why. Yeah, so
I'm glad you're bringing it up because the word affordable is loaded both politically and very misconstrued because in common talk, right, if I want to buy a car that's affordable, people know that's not a Maserati. But when we talk about housing, it can have some regulatory meaning as well as just meaning something my college graduated kid can afford or anybody at any point in the housing continuum. So this word specifically in this time, in this country, in this housing crisis has come to be very cumbered with a lot of assumptions. So I really love that we're having this opportunity. Sorry to keep everybody up, but thank you for bringing this because I think it's a good topic. How you get things that are affordable, lowercase a, for people to buy is that you have really brand new shiny pennies and you have old not so shiny pennies. And if we burden the not so shiny pennies with a lot of obligations, that takes away from its ability to be affordable, which then reduces that continuum and that supply.
So yeah, we're still discussing your motion, I think. Yeah.
I'd like to add to that discussion. So, you know, part of my concern is, you know, I talked about consolidation in the industry and whatnot. So, MinnesotaHousing.gov has a 14-page PDF entitled "The Loss of Naturally Occurring Affordable Housing." And it mentions that 2,300 units are lost annually of affordable housing. And so, and it goes into a lot more detail, of course. So that's part of my concern, is that, you know, I'm not questioning the morals or the business sense of these men here, but just that things change in the future. And do we want to, you know, why are we giving this variance? What is the purpose of this, of us giving this variance?
To, yeah, allow it to change from hotel to a place for someone to live.
I know literally what it is, right? It's like, are we doing it, I mean, is there a structural reason? I'd argue there's no reason to give this variance, right? There's plenty of land for them to build. There's no difficulty for the business. A monetary difficulty is not a difficulty, right?
Right, so the practical difficulty test or standards changed a few years ago. It's the three, there are practical difficulties in complying with the ordinance. The term practical difficulty means the following, and I'll go through it. The property owner proposes to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by the zoning ordinance. The plight of the landowner is due to circumstances unique to the property, not created by the landowner. And the third is it will not alter the essential character of the locality. So it was staff's opinion that those three are satisfied in not requiring the construction of the garages.
And when the deck, if they came forward and they'd built a deck on the parking lot, our very first comment would be, well, that's not part of the Southdale guidelines because we don't have pedestrian-friendly spaces and parking decks are ugly, and it would change the character of the lot. So I would argue in this case, I mean, then we would be forcing a different project, right? Then the developer would have to figure out a revenue stream that would support that 4 million, and then we've got a tower with retail and more apartment. I mean, like, everything costs, so then it builds. To me, if they were magically going to make it a luxury building and needed nothing from us but this variance, I think the variance holds in my mind.
So there was a motion and a second. Maybe based on some feedback from Commissioner Smith's question to Carrie, maybe it's not a condition. I know you said it wasn't necessarily a condition. You were just like a recommendation. So, I mean, that's something that we could leave to the council between now and then city attorney can weigh in.
Yep.
But I think more or less there is probably some shared favor of that. If there's no further discussion, we could do a roll call vote. Unless someone wants to, yeah.
Can you read the motion again? Or say it again? What do we have? I don't
You got
remember.
it, Lou, you made it.
A recommendation,
ago, though.
a recommendation, I know, right? A recommendation to council that they require a contribution to the pedestrian cyclist fund in order for this variance.
And, yeah, but I guess
Just a quick question, right? So we could vote to approve what we have, but the recommendation is not binding, right? So it's just saying a recommendation. We could also, add as a recommendation with city council to think about, I don't know how to make this affordable, right? Again, a recommendation, not a binding resolution of some kind. So do we just say we approve the variance, and then we say we have a few recommendations? Is that how it normally goes? But I'm not sure if the motion has to include the recommendation in it, is what I'm saying.
I think you could make a recommendation to include the 11 conditions outlined in the staff report, and then an additional outside of those 11 conditions that the council consider contribution to the cyclist fund.
are you asking because you'd be interested to add an affordability requirement? Is that what you were getting toward?
That's still weighing on me a little bit.
Okay.
To Lou's point, right? If we stuck to the code, we would require that there was some kind of parking ramp or some kind of covered parking that would go here, right? But we all feel good that that's going to be too expensive, and we want to bring more units into the space. But then the more units is really units where it's naturally occurring affordable housing, right? So that's a sweet thing that we're looking at. That's good, but that's not binding, right? And we can't put it in the code. And so the thought is that, how do we strongly suggest that we want the developer to continue along this path, right, in having affordable housing and maintaining these rent levels that they've outlined for us? How do we get that to be something that they strongly consider? It really is what I want to have them take into consideration.
And I think because it's naturally occurring, they are at their price point because that's what the market is bearing. There's, we can't determine what the market will bear. This facility and the square footage and the number of bedrooms and the uncovered parking is going to determine what the market rate is, and it's naturally occurring because of what it compares to, because of what it's, because what similar buildings are making. People are going to pay more for here, so I don't think we deal with the continuation of that at all.
I shared a similar sentiment, but I feel like I'm pretty satisfied with it. It feels like it complicates a rather simple matter at this point.
Yep, I would agree. I would agree with that. I think I just had to work through that a little bit, so I would go forward with Lou's recommendation.
Any other comments? Or can we proceed with a roll call vote with the motion and the second motion?
Okay. Commissioner Alkire.
Aye.
Commissioner Miranda.
Aye.
Commissioner Padilla.
Aye.
Commissioner Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Day.
Aye.
Commissioner Bornstein.
Aye.
Commissioner Felt.
Aye.
Commissioner Henneman.
Aye.
Chair Bennett.
Aye. Motion carries. Best of luck with your project. Thank you so much for doing business in Edina and being creative with what we got. Thank you to people coming in for the public hearing too. Really appreciate the engagement. All right, we don't have any other reports or recommendations. As Commissioner Day mentioned, no chair member comments or staff comments, so we can just move right to kidding. So chair member comments? Yeah, Commissioner Padilla.
Just a very quick one. I got to go to Putt Shack a few days ago, and it was the Putt Shack. And it was the first time I have been clear from, the public hearing all the way through actually getting to a place that we approved, and it was a great experience. So happy to have done that, and Putt Shack's real fun. So.
Yeah, that's just a great example of, when you think of what malls were, just more retail, and now it's trying to kind of naturally keep them alive as more of that entertainment shift, and then other things too.
Yeah, and the innovation.
Yeah.
The innovation that we, kind of got to be a part of. And so, yeah, very fun.
That's really cool. Commissioner Miranda.
Yeah, so I know Minnesotans and Twin Cityans in particular are, have been, a lot of our neighbors have been like, oh, the weather's amazing, it's great, it's wonderful and everything, and I'm just terrified. I just think this is absolutely horrible. And, when the two hurricanes in Florida and the Southeast, and, record rain, and Asheville just kind of destroyed, tornadoes in Florida, we're having record warmth, and, poor little kiddos are going to have to deal with snow tomorrow for Halloween. It's really kind of terrifying, and so that's why, I pushed for the cycling fund addition or whatever, because I think that anything the city does, I think should address our climate action goals, because the world is going to hell in a handbasket, right before our eyes. And it's like, if we don't do something, it has to happen at every level of government. And I feel like, we're like first responders here and that we have to do something about it. So, yeah, I mean, it's been nice that, I still have a tan, but it's kind of terrifying that we have this weather and we're back into a drought, so it's really, it's hard on farmers, it's hard on everybody. So let's keep up the good work. Thanks.
Commissioner Alcari, you got anything? Journal entry. Yeah. Anyone else?
Yeah, I usually don't have anything, but can I go?
Yeah.
Okay. Two things real quick. One, everybody should check out the Cahill District. My wife threw me a 40th birthday party at a new kind of a business that has an event space there. And I don't need to give a huge plug for it, but I know Commissioner Alcar, you did a lot of work on that area. It's a part of the city not everybody knows about, but there's interesting things happening there. So don't write it off. Go check it out, learn about who's doing what, and maybe there's something interesting for you there. Second, and I think maybe more relevant to what we've been working on, Commissioner Smith, you raised the idea, can't remember when ago, maybe a couple months ago, that maybe, and it came up in the context of the racially prejudicial deeds in the country club neighborhood and some other parts of the city. I read recently that I think the city of Mounds View, I think it was Mounds View, mandated that whenever there is a sale of a home that has one of those unlawful restrictions in the deed, that it be removed as part of the sale. And apparently it's not very burdensome to do and not costly. And the fact that it was required suggests that maybe it's legal. I think I was saying I didn't understand one way or the other, but since there's now precedent for it from another city, I think maybe it's time to rethink about whether Edina should be doing it. I don't think we're the right forum for requiring that, but there was another commission or a committee, I think, that was. And so just to your idea, it seems like it's getting some validation out there in the local government market, and probably is worth citing that precedent and pushing forward here. You look at the map of where the racially restrictive and unlawful deeds are, it's all country club and then some other parts of the city, which just doesn't need to be there anymore. So you were ahead of the game when you came up with that idea, and I think I was the one that said I would try to pitch it to whatever the right committee was. So I think I'm going to figure that out and then cite that Mounds View precedent to them.
Great. Commissioner Felt.
I encourage you all to go to, the city has a page dedicated to racial covenants. And the Human Rights and Race Relations Committee did work in 20 and 21, and the city has removed racial covenants on all 52 of the properties they own. There are 2,800 in the city of Edina. There are 550 in Country Club. So it is not just a Country Club issue, and it's not just an Edina issue. It is all over the Midwest. It is in Ohio. It is in Michigan. There are many of them. So the city of Edina is one of 28 cities in Minnesota that participate in the Just Deeds project, and the Just Deeds project is the project where lawyers donate their time for people to take these deeds off their properties. So we have a lot of information in the city, and the HRC and the city has done a lot of work on this already.
I mean, you think of all the things you sign when you buy a house. I mean, what's another signature, right? Let's get that thing off there. Thank you guys for sharing. Great news updates. Commissioner Hanneman?
Motion to adjourn.
Yeah.
Motion to adjourn. Oh, sorry. Oh,
Yeah.
you sure?
He said trick or treat.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Meeting's been adjourned. Thank you, everyone.